Good morning, we're here at Allandale Station, Barrie, Ontario. I'm going to cover the finer details. We have 4 Bousquet energy recovery / makeup air units that serve the residential suites and the common areas of the building. The units exhaust from all of the resident suites, the washroom areas, and they bring in 100% outside air on the opposite side that is preconditioned by the energy wheel, heated or cooled by either the gas furnace or the DX cooling, and then it gets supplied back into the common corridors. Basic maintenance points that I'll cover: we have a handful of 2-inch disposable pleated filters that need to be looked at approximately 3 months a year. There's 2 here in the fresh air intake hoods, and then I'll show you on the other side of the unit where the exhaust air comes back from the building. There is approximately 6 filters inside there. The supply blower and exhaust blower, those are also belt driven. So another maintenance item is the 2 drive belts. All of the maintenance information for the belts and the filters can be found on the nameplate just inside the door here. We'll also give you a list that summarizes the 4 units, what size belt, what size filters, quantities, etc. That way you kind of have a general summary all in one location. So basically, if you think of the unit is basically split right down the middle along its length. On the opposite side from where I'm standing, that is where all of the exhaust air is going to be drawn from inside the building. So basically it's drawn up through the bank of filters, and then right about this point there is an energy wheel that rotates. The principle is, in the winter time, we are exhausting warm air from the space. We're bringing in cold outside air. So the way it works is, as that wheel rotates, it absorbs heat from the warm exhaust. Then as it rotates around into the incoming airstream, it transfers that heat into the cold air, preheat it, which reduces the overall heating load. Same functionality in the summertime. We're exhausting cooler air than what we're bringing in, so we get a little bit of recovery on the air conditioning side. That wheel itself is virtually maintenance free as long as you maintain the return air filters and the outside air filters. That wheel will stay clean. It's made of a corrugated aluminum material, so as far as longevity, unless it gets some extreme physical damage, which is a very rare case, it should last for upwards of 20 years. The energy wheel, if you find that the filters aren't being maintained and you start to notice extra dirt being brought into the building, or if during a maintenance inspection you notice that the surface of the wheel is starting to get dirty, you have 2 options. The wheel is washable, just low pressure from a garden hose. You can actually just let the city water pressure flow through the corrugations in the wheel. That's going to flush out any debris. In an extreme case, the entire wheel cassette is actually removable. You can slide the whole thing out, lay it down, and then run over it with a low pressure garden hose. The only other maintenance item on that wheel, because it rotates, there is a small motor and there is a drive belt that wraps around the outside of the wheel. Again, it's a very low RPM, roughly 60 RPM or less, so there's not a lot of stress on it. That drive belt should last somewhere between 3 to 5 years before you need to take a look at replacing it. So that is the exhaust side. The side that we're standing on now is the fresh air intake side, so outside air is going to be drawn in through these 2 hoods. The DX cooling coil is actually right here in this section. Supply blower is inside this door, which we'll cover, and then this section right here is the gas furnace. So during the winter months or shoulder seasons where the outside air is cooler than what we want the space to be, we're actually going to temper the air with a natural gas furnace, and then it gets supplied out to the building. One other feature that ERVs number 3 and number 4 have is gas-fired humidifiers. This is ERV number 3. So on the other side of the unit, I'm going to show you the gas-fired humidifier. Basically, when you bring cool outside air in during the winter, it's very dry relative to what you want in the building. So through the 2 larger units, we actually add humidity so that we can maintain 35 to 40% relative humidity in the space. And the reason we want to maintain 35 to 40% is it keeps static electricity down, and it also suppresses viruses that humans are susceptible to. They don't like that range of humidity level to survive, so it actually helps keep the building healthier. On all four units are basically the same relative to size and capacity. So the things I'm going to cover here apply to all 4 units. They just might be laid out a little bit differently, or a little larger, a little smaller. So I'm going to show you a few things to check in the control cabinet here. Need to relocate, or are we good?
Oh, she's good.
Okay.
Just keep paying attention to my phone.
Okay.
Okay, well, actually,
yeah.
If we were talking, close it up again.
Oh, yep. Okay. So I'm going to cover a few items in the control cabinet just to check if you notice that the unit isn't running. Just quick things to check before you register a service call. At the top of the electrical section on all 4 units, you'll see the blue Distech PLC assembly. Each one has what we call a local HMI, which basically is a local interface where if you come up to the unit and you want to do some troubleshooting, or you want to check the status of the unit, you can go into that screen and see what the various commands, if there's any alarms present, what the current status of the unit is. The 4 operator keypads that are downstairs in the maintenance closet, they basically repeat information from this unit, but only the information that the end user would need to adjust on a day-to-day basis. The information you're going to get out of this PLC here is more to assist a technician when they're diagnosing an issue. Other things to look for, you'll see there's several banks of fuses. The large copper fuses are what we call the smart spots. If you notice that this center section here, if that is either black or red, that's an indication that that fuse has blown, and chances are something downstream, motor, condensing unit, etc., isn't going to be functioning until that fuse is replaced. The energy wheel, as I mentioned before, it rotates. It is controlled by this variable frequency drive here. Again, during normal operation, that drive is just going to show the operating frequency. If there is a fault on the drive, it's going to flash a 3-letter code, and then you have to refer back to the drive manual to see what that code relates to. The most common code would be OLF, Orange Larry Frank, which is an indication that the motor has exceeded the rated amperage. In most cases, just cycling the power to the unit is going to reset the drive, and it's going to overtake operation again. Down beside the drive, we have 2 contactors. One is for the supply blower and one is for the exhaust blower. At the bottom of the contactor, we have what are called overloads, and there's 2 buttons on the overloads. One is blue and one is red. If the motor has exceeded the amperage, this acts like a circuit breaker, and it will actually shut the motor down. So if you come up and you notice that one of the motors isn't running, the first thing to check would be the overload. There's a small box that has a little flag. If it's tripped, there's going to be a white line, and the easiest way to test it is just to press the reset button. Other than that, there's really not much else from an operator perspective. The PLC, and I'll cover this a little bit more downstairs on the user keypad. This unit, if it locks out on heating, if there's an issue with the furnace, or if there's an issue with the cooling, an issue with the humidifier, an issue with the fans, you're actually going to get an error code on the keypad downstairs. Your first indication is most likely going to be you're going to notice that the unit isn't supplying warm air or cool air to the space. Next thing to check would be that operator keypad, see if there is a local error there, and then from there you can come up here and start to investigate what the possible cause might be. This door gives you access to the supply blower. You'll notice that this door opens in because the blower creates a positive pressure, so it's an inward opening door as a safety feature. If the fan was running and you were to walk up to the unit, open the two handles, not realizing it, the door would swing open quite quickly and could injure you. So the supply blower, as I mentioned before, is belt driven. So we have a B-section belt that essentially, usual service recommendation, as I mentioned before, filters approximately every 3 months, and then belts either every 6 or every 12 months. Because the unit does run 24/7, 365, it's probably best to err on the side of changing it more frequently rather than waiting until it fails. All right, we've moved over to the exhaust side of the air handler now. Behind this door is the return air filters that I spoke about earlier. Basically, they just slide out of the track. They are a 2-inch disposable pleated filter. I would recommend keeping a couple boxes of each size on hand so that you have them and can change them as needed. And then also from this door you can see this half of the energy wheel that I was talking about earlier. So if you ever needed to do any cleaning, you can do it from this compartment, and obviously you're only going to be able to access half of the wheel, and then you can just manually rotate it by hand to get the other half. Okay, now I'm over here at the section of the unit that has the natural gas fired humidifier. These are high efficiency humidifiers, so they're going to extract every little last bit of energy they can out of the input gas. From a maintenance standpoint, they are on softened water, so that is going to help extend the interval between cleanings. It's also going to make your cleanings a little bit easier. They function very similar to your kettle at home. Obviously, we're filling this tank with water. We have a in-shot gas burner and a tubular heat exchanger inside that is going to heat up and causes the water to boil, boils off into steam, which then gets injected into the supply air behind me. Obviously, anytime you boil water, any minerals, debris, etc. that is in the water is going to be left behind. The issue with a humidifier is the element that you're using to boil the water. Obviously, that has to get hot. That is going to then attract the leftover minerals. So what's going to happen is the heat exchanger inside is going to collect those in the form of surface scale. What I always tell people is, just like your filters, It's always easier to clean it more frequently and stay ahead of the scale buildup rather than letting it go an entire season and then trying to clean it at the end, because it will be virtually impossible. So when it does come time to clean it, you're going to shut the unit down, do a full tank drain, and then we have 13 bolts here that keep this access panel secure to the tank. Loosen those bolts. You're going to remove the two bars, which will let the two side bars come off, and then you can open this access panel, which is going to give you access to the interior of the tank and the exterior of the heat exchanger. During normal operation, that heat exchanger, between the time when it's running and the time when it's off, it's actually going to flex a little bit, which helps to break off some of the surface scale. So when you first open it, you're probably going to find some large chunks of scale in the bottom of the tank, which you can just take out by hand. Any surface scale that's left behind, if it's really thick, you can use, there's a commercial cleaner called Rid Lime that you can actually fill the tank, I'd say 2/3 with water, put a half a gallon of Rid Lime in, or you can use CLR or even vinegar. Just let that solution sit there and kind of pre-treat the scale. You don't want to use any metal scrapers or brushes when you're trying to remove the scale, because the stainless steel, even though it's stainless steel, the surfaces are relatively thin, and you don't want to damage either the tank or the heat exchanger. So plastic implements only. If there is a fault, you will get an indication. There will be an error code that comes up on the keypad downstairs that is going to indicate an issue with the humidifier. That's kind of a general alarm. When you come up on the display, the Nortec unit is going to have an error code. One really nice thing about the Nortec units is you don't need to have a physical copy of the manual. You walk up to the unit, you press on the part of the screen that has the error code. It's actually going to bring up the full written description of what the code means and what possible remedies are for fixing that code. The gas unit does have internal timers, if you will. So after a couple hundred hours, it's going to close a contact which will send a signal to the keypad downstairs. What it wants is I forget what they call it. I believe it's we'll call it a light maintenance, where you're basically just going to check, make sure everything looks okay, and then after, I believe it's 2,000 hours, it's actually going to shut down completely, and it won't allow the unit to run until you've done what they consider to be a major service. And again, it's all going to be identified in full text right on the Nortec keypad. Okay, so we're in the 4th floor janitor's room, and we have the 4 remote keypad interfaces for the 4 Bousquet ERVs. They act very similar to your normal thermostat at home. The icons across the bottom of the screen are going to show you what mode and what parts of the unit are functioning. So starting in the bottom left-hand corner, we've got a fan indicator, which means that we are in occupied mode. The fans are running. If we've got a little flame, the furnace is actively heating. The water droplet indicates that we are humidifying, and actually the person inside the house also indicates the occupied status. By default, the display is going to alternate between the current space temperature and the current relative humidity that's being measured. The sensors are out in the corridors. So we're kind of measuring, getting a more average measurement because we're measuring the common area. The function of the controller, you have the ability to start and stop the unit. You have the ability to enable or disable heating, enable, disable cooling, enable, disable the energy wheel, and on ERVs 3 and 4, you can enable or disable the humidifier. Okay, so using the enter button, you can scroll through. Your first choice is going to be whether the unit is on or off. Second choice is going to be whether the gas furnace or heat is enabled. Third choice is cooling. Fourth is humidity. Fifth is the energy wheel. And then it'll show you the outdoor temperature, which is just a reading. And on ERVs 3 and 4, it's going to show you what your current relative humidity set point is. To make any modifications, you're going to use the up or down arrow. And if you want to change your supply temperature, you can do that once you're not in that menu. If I come back, wait till the temperature is on the home screen, you'll see in the top right-hand corner it's actually going to change, and it's saying that you're now adjusting the supply set point. As I mentioned on the roof, if there is a fault on the unit, the display is going to change and it's going to have the word error and then a 1 or 2 digit number, and we'll get a little card made up that you can post right on the wall that has the list of what the common error codes are. In terms of the heating or cooling, you do have the ability to enable or disable it. The unit has a built-in functionality in the software that at an outdoor temperature, which I believe was set for 65 degrees, I can confirm, it's automatically going to change operating modes. So in other words, when the outdoor temperature is below 65, it's automatically going to disable cooling, enable heating. And once the outdoor temperature rises above 65, it's going to disable heating, go on cooling. So you don't really necessarily have to worry about enabling or disabling the functionality here. Like I say, there is a algorithm in the controller that is going to take care of that for you. All right, we're now down in the pool mechanical room, standing next to the Dectron Dryatron pool dehumidifier. This unit is responsible for maintaining the relative humidity level in the pool, as well as controlling air temperature, and it also has the ability to reheat the pool water. Basically, if you think of your air conditioner at home, primarily it is there to cool the air. When we're talking about a pool natatorium, we're not concerned so much about air temperature. What we're trying to do is we're trying to remove moisture. So think of the Dryatron as an air conditioner on steroids. We have okay, let me think about this for a second.
Can you think for a second?
Yep.
We'll start shot on the wall.
Given the Dectron, it's
Oh, it's good.
sufficient heavy.
Good.
Okay, so we bring return air from the pool behind me. That's going to be warm, moist air. We bring it into the unit. We run it through a evaporator coil where we're going to cool that air and try and condense as much moisture as we can out of it. Then we have 3 heat sinks that we can use. One is an air reheat coil. Because we've cooled the air in order to wring the moisture out of it, we have to reheat that air before we introduce it back into the space. If we were to introduce it directly without reheating it, you would basically have a rainforest in the pool area. So we're always going to be reheating the air to a certain point when we're dehumidifying. We also have another heat exchanger that we circulate the pool water through. Anytime, in order to have evaporation, the pool has to lose energy in the form of heat. So once we've dehumidified, we've captured that energy. the logical place to put it back to is the pool water, because that's where it came from in the beginning. So like I say, we have a coaxial heat exchanger. We're always circulating pool water through. The third option we have is if the space temperature is satisfied, we have the energy in the refrigeration circuit. We don't want to put it back into the air because we would overheat the room. We have a plate heat exchanger in here that is connected to the chilled water loop. That way we'll dump the heat to that, which will prevent overheating the space. Unlike your air conditioner or furnace at home, where you would adjust your temperatures when you're home versus when you're away, in a pool environment, once it is set up and at condition, we'll call it, you never change the temperature set point or the relative humidity set point. Another key thing to keep in mind is your air temperature. You want that to be 1 to 2 degrees warmer than your pool water temperature. What that does is that keeps the rate of evaporation at a calculated rate, keeps the capacity of the machine within spec. If you were to raise the pool water temperature significantly above the air temperature, you're going to rapidly increase the evaporation rate of the pool, and you'll find that the unit's not going to keep up. So regardless of what you want your pool temperature to be, let's say this unit was designed for 85 degrees, you might want your pool water temperature up to 87 or 88. The key thing is, as long as you adjust your air temperature and keep that same 2-degree gradient between the pool and the air, you'll be fine. We have a touchscreen keypad on the unit. The standard home screen, as you see it right now, is going to show us what our return air or space temperature is, what the current measured relative humidity is, and what the pool water temperature is. We have a bunch of status indicators on the right-hand side that will show if the blower's running, if we have an active dehumidification call, if we have a space heating call, AC or pool heat. When they become active, they will light up green to indicate that they're running. Normal design is we try to maintain our relative humidity at 50% or lower during unoccupied periods, and room temperature typically in the area of 85 degrees, which means the pool would be somewhere in the 83 to 84 degree range. If you want to make adjustments, which, as I say before, it's basically a set it and forget it thing, under the user tab, you have set points, room temperature. If I press on room temperature, it's going to bring up this screen. Right now, the room temperature is set for 85 degrees. If you want to change it, let's say I want to change it to 88, I can just type in the number 88 and hit enter. Now my room temperature is set for 88 degrees. I'm going to start the unit just so I can show you the status indicators. So going back to the home screen, after a short delay, the blower is going to start up. So as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, the blower status indicator has illuminated green, indicating that the blower is running. We're still measuring a room temperature of 84 degrees. I changed the set point to 88. So after 60 seconds or so, we should get our space heat status lighting up as green. This unit, we have a hot water reheat coil. So the unit is going to send a signal to the valve. The valve's going to open. We're going to circulate warm water from the boiler loop through and heat the air. During normal operation, everything is going to be green. Green is good, obviously. If we have an issue and a sensor goes out of range or something happens that the unit doesn't start properly, the alarm indicator is going to light up in red to indicate that there's an alarm. To check that, you want to go into logs and the current alarms. Right now we don't have any alarms present, so none are showing. You can also go into the alarm log, and that's going to give you a record of all of the alarms that have been recorded in the unit. It's going to give you the date and the time that the alarm happened, and also a brief description. If you want to get an explanation of what that alarm message might be, you can press the Help button, and it's going to give you a description of what that error actually was. As far as maintenance items go on the Dryatron, the supply blower is a direct drive, so there is zero maintenance to be done on that. In the return air, we're going to have two 2-inch pleated filters, just like we had in the air handling units on the roof. Simple thumb screw to remove the access door. And then filters are going to slide out. Again, the blower on the unit runs 24/7, 365. So I would recommend changing the filters at least every 3 months. This unit also has the ability, during occupied periods, we bring in a small amount of outside air for ventilation. So on the left-hand side of the machine, we have another access door where we can access the filter for the outside air. And again, it's just a 2-inch pleated filter. The size is on the outside of the door. As I mentioned, the Dryatron has the capability of heating the pool water. So anytime we are running our compressor for dehumidification, we're capturing heat energy into the refrigerant, which, if needed, we can put it back into the pool water. This system also has an auxiliary gas-fired pool water heater. One thing to keep in mind is the auxiliary heater is not tied in with the Dectron unit. So the key thing to remember with the auxiliary is whatever temperature you set the Dryatron to for the pool water temperature, you want to set the auxiliary 1 to 2 degrees below that temperature. So for example, if I set the Dryatron to 85-degree pool water, I want to set the auxiliary either to 83 or 84 degrees. The reason for that is if the Dryatron, if the pool needs heat and the compressor isn't running in the Dryatron, the system is going to rely on the auxiliary pool heater, but we don't want to have that temperature above what we're trying to heat the pool to with the Dryatron. Because what could happen if we overheat the pool with the auxiliary, the Dryatron is going to see that increased water temperature, and then we'll never get that energy-saving functionality from the Dryatron. Okay, we're now in the kitchen, and behind me here is the Spring Air, what we call the True Flow controller. This is an on-demand ventilation system controller. The way it functions is the exhaust hood here that's above the appliances. We have temperature probes in the exhaust collar, and as the cooking load increases, obviously our exhaust air temperature is going to get warmer. The system is going to recognize that and automatically increase the amount of air that's being exhausted, and at the same time increase the amount of air that's being brought in back in to replace that. From a keypad standpoint, it's basically just a general status. Cooking staff, you come in the morning, you can turn the system on as soon as you come in the morning. The beauty of the TrueFlow is if the system's on but you're not cooking, it's going to run at a bare minimum ventilation rate. Then as you start cooking, it's going to ramp up automatically. The one exception to that is if you put a handful of steaks or something that produces a lot of smoke on the grill, there is a manual override button here that says max air. If you press that button once, it will turn yellow and you can hear the exhaust system ramps up to full speed. To go back to normal operation, you can just press that again to cancel it. The green bar basically is going to show you what level of total capacity you're running at, and that will adjust automatically based on the cooking load.